Welcome to the Catholic Midlife Podcast, where we're addressing the challenges and the opportunities of midlife from a uniquely Catholic perspective. Join us each week as we spark a midlife renewal and create a firm foundation for the next wonderful, exciting, awesome season of life.
Hi, and welcome to the Midlife Catholic Podcast. It's so great to be here with you. I'm Curtis. I'm here with Karen.
Hi, welcome everyone.
Yeah, so this is our season one. Season one is Grit and Grace in Midlife Transitions. And this is the episode 2, and we're going to start talking about transitions. Now, Karen, I was going to introduce ourselves as Grit and Grace. So you would be Grace, obviously.
Well, no, that was my next question. Who gets to be Grit and who gets to be Grace?
But I'm like, the thing under your shoe, that's not good. So we're just going to skip over that.
Okay.
So now I've lost my train of thought. We're talking about season 1, transitions. So, I mean, I went my adult life without, knowing or thinking about transitions, but now I can't get through the day without thinking about and seeing transition themes.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, now that you mention it, I think I was like a lot of people, I'm experiencing transitions and they're sort of like things I have to get through or suffer through. And I'm glad when they're over. But I think I never really appreciated until I started researching the topic and working with clients in transition, just how powerful an image it is really in the narrative of our whole lives.
Yeah. So it's a personal growth theme or tool or insight, but it speaks to spiritual growth. So I've got a scripture verse for you if you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is from Luke chapter 5:37. No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins and will be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. But new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. So new wine needs fresh wineskins. So this is a theme, and I'll just let our listeners sort of see how it applies as this goes along, because I think it's very applicable.
I think it's very insightful. And
Yeah.
we'll definitely be coming back to that scripture. Yeah. In fact, it makes me think about something that William Bridges says, which is a real transition is more than a change, because there's something that happens internally that's transformational. And because the transformation happens in you, you have this ability to receive something new or step into something new, whether that's new purpose or new identity or new priorities or just a new way of being. And so part of his point is, part of what it means to have a transition is to be changing so that you can receive something new in your life.
Yeah. So if you want something new, you have to have the transition, or at least very often. And certainly transitions hold something new for you. And that's what we're always looking for in our spiritual lives, right? It's new things. We need something new because we're trying to continually be transformed. And as we change, we're ready to receive the new graces. God never runs out of graces for us.
Right.
But we run out of the rate of our change can lag sometimes.
Right. So Curtis, actually, I don't know if I've shared this with you yet, but I was reading this book by Bruce Feiler. It's called Life in Transitions. I think you've seen it lying around.
Sure.
And one of the things that he says, here's the thing. So he started this project and he's kind of a storyteller. So he went around and he gathered people's stories about their lives. like their life narrative. And it started out as a project to gather the stories, but then he sort of found these themes in people's lives, because as they talked about their life story, they'd position these really transformative moments around these pivotal transitions that they experienced in their life. And sometimes it was something they created or chose to happen, and sometimes it's something that they didn't choose, it just happened to them. But in all these stories, there was this new thing that emerged out of the transition.
Yeah. So what I think you're saying is when you talk to people about the trajectory of their life and their life story and what happened, that a lot of those stories revolve around the transitional times in their life, because that's where, that's where something happened that was really noteworthy.
Right. And one thing Feeler says is when he looked at people's life stories, he noticed that our lives today really have a lot of transitions in them. And they're not all huge, right? We're going to have a few really major, he calls them life quakes over the course of our adult life. But as adults, we're going to have 30 to 40 disruptive events or experiences in life. And it really struck me because that's like one every 12 or 18 months in your life. And when they happen to me, here's the thing, I'm like surprised that something is disrupting my life.
Yeah, it's always like, this should not be happening.
This should not be
I shouldn't
happening.
have to deal with this. Change, we don't want it.
Right. And yet, really, they're part of the narrative of our life, and they're integral to not just our life story, but our growth personally and spiritually.
Yeah, I mean, so life's not a party, and it's not a endless tragedy. It intersects with tragedy,
right?
But it's a journey, and these transitional moments, it's just part of it, part of the whole deal.
Yeah, and I feel like when I shifted my perspective to expect them as part of life instead of be surprised and annoyed when they showed up. Yeah. It's like I just had a different approach to receiving them, and like kind of more openness to what could happen in the midst of that.
Yeah. So this is something that happens a lot. So, I mean, we got into the transitions as part of our life coaching practice, but understanding some of the human phenomena just really helps in the spiritual life. So just knowing that things are changing, things are happening, this is part of life's process, it helps me accept them in a way, instead of just trying to figure out, okay, what's God doing now? What's the thing? What's the next obstacle? It just helps me to know that, look, it's just part of growing. Things happen in life, and the channel's always changing, and that's how it works.
Right. So what do you think is helpful in terms of how we approach transitions that makes them more powerful and gives us that grace and transformation in the midst of it?
Well, one thing that really helps me is, so your transition, it starts with an ending,
right?
Starts with an ending, and it has a middle, which is kind of a mess. And so the middle is very interesting, and then there's the ending phase where you start to come out of it. So maybe you could picture of it as descending down into the valley and then passing through that and coming out the other side. So in this middle phase, it's chaotic, and understanding that chaos is part. It's not just so the chaos is essential to us as humans to be able to have the growth. So here, let me be a little more specific. We can have to unlearn things. And this was a huge concept for me, because I'm used to thinking of learning as kind of a linear process or a spiral or a helical process where you go around the same things and you're always taking them to the next level. That's learning. But as humans, if we want to have personal and spiritual growth, there's always something to be unlearned. There comes a time when, okay, what we knew, this is how it works, doesn't serve us anymore. And we have to
Right.
unlearn that. And that's, well, it reminds me of Jordan Peterson and his lobsters, where when they get defeated in battle, the males, their brains start to dissolve.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, it's an unlearning process. We have to be emptied out so the new can be
Ah,
received. And I really appreciate having the human perspective
right.
on that, because when it feels like God is emptying you out, it's
Mm,
a lot of questions come up. Like, why are you doing this? I resent this. No, thank you very much. But as the perspective shifts to, okay, what is it I have to unlearn so I can move through this process?
mm, mm. So there's a definite letting go of some things about either who we were, how we operated, beliefs we had, perspectives we had, ways we had of doing things. Is that what you're saying? We
Well,
let go of some of
that's part of
those.
it.
Hmm.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
So we should probably give some examples of transitions. I mean, we're speaking pretty abstractly here,
Right.
right? So divorce, marriage, death of somebody important to you, changing careers often,
Right.
sometimes moving, depending on what you're moving out of and into, major shifts in relationships.
Mhm.
Um,
Empty nesting, your
and
kids are leaving
yeah,
home, losing a lot of weight, having a health issue that's disruptive.
mm-hmm,
As you said, aging parents, caring for people, having new responsibilities
mm-hmm,
in our life, or having responsibilities taken from us that we
mm-hmm.
used to have as well. Yeah, there's a lot of things that count as a transition. And here's the thing, it is somewhat unique how these life events affect people. So different events are going to affect people differently. And out of all of these, 30 to 40 transitions you might have as an adult, there's going to be 3 or 4 whoppers that just really do it to you in terms of shifting who you are, and sometimes just your whole outlook on life, what you think is important, what you're investing in, the kind of person that you are, what you're doing with your whole life can be
Yeah,
changed.
actually, it's one of the things we're always aiming at in our coaching practice, right? Is we always talk about the transformation,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a transitional type process in and of itself.
Right. And I think midlife is just a time of so many transitions. And it's very common for us to be, having identity questions, having purpose questions, especially if things change and we're like, well, that was a lot of my purpose, whether that was raising the kids or having a certain type of career. And then we're rethinking, well, who am I moving forward? And what's my purpose? And where's my new mission? And what's going to be different about my life? What do I have to offer now?
Yeah. So I saw one lady, she was talking about the empty nest transition and what they were going to do when the kids moved out.
Yeah.
And her comment was, yeah, my husband wants to be drunk, naked, pot smoking hippies. It was an online thing.
Sure,
Everybody's
sure.
like, sounds like my husband, or sign me up, or I'll drink to that.
It's his new mission,
His
right?
new mission.
In life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So the identity shift, that's kind of coach language, but I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Can you enlarge on that a little bit? I mean, you started to talk about Bruce Feiler and the narrative and how he's looking at stories.
Right, right. So one of the things he found was that when people have these larger transitions, he calls them life quakes, they're just particularly pivotal in terms of how the person understands themselves and how they see themselves and who they think they are. And often there's some kind of shift in their roles. We all have identities in terms of different roles that we play in our life as parents, as children, as spouse, as sibling, as coworker. And a lot of times when something about those roles shifted, there was this re-engaging with who am I and where do I fit in this whole picture and what fits in my life. And there's something about actually telling the story and telling the narrative that helps make sense out of what's going on in that transition and what people are experiencing.
Yeah. So, the identity shift, it's very profound. So it's like Abram becomes Abraham. That's a change in identity.
Right.
And it's very profound. And we're creatures of narrative, the stories we tell ourselves, and just the way our brain works, how it distributes memories and reactions across time, and we reach back and we stitch those together to create a story about who we are and why we are and what we do and what we're about. So narrative and identity is so central.
Exactly. So we want to spend a few episodes talking about transitions and what grit and grace look like in transitions. But I want to come back to that scripture for today, that no one puts new wine into old wineskins, but new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. And I think that's what's so beautiful about transitional moments in our lives. They're opportunities to be transformed into new wineskins. And ultimately, it's so that we can hold this new grace that God has for us. We can receive, whether it's a new way of being or a new purpose or a new mission, but something new that God has for us, something deeper. And so I think we want to approach our transitions thinking about, what is this new thing and what needs to change in me so I can receive the new thing?
Yeah. So Karen, I have so much to share. Like I was saying, the concepts around transition come up for me repeatedly in spiritual life and personal growth. And I want to share about the different stages, some of the foibles and follies that we can get into, but also help people create some insights that are going to help them in those areas. Excellent.
We're going to close out this episode, but we invite you to join us in our succeeding episodes around transition. In fact, on our website, thecatholicmidlife.com, we have a free guide called Managing Midlife Transitions. So if you hop over there, you can sign up and you can receive the free guide on transitions. We'd love to have you be with us next week. And thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Catholic Midlife Podcast. It's great to be here with you. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite app or platform. Leave a review. That's so helpful so that others like you can find the podcast. And be sure to tell your friends. We'll see you next week.